my name is Logan Manford, founder of Blowfish Clothing. We are a clothing company known not only for our amazing clothing, but also for our even more amazing message, all for all. This is not your normal podcast. No celebrities, sports, or money. This podcast, the Speakeasy, has been created for the other stories, the ones you may not want to hear. These words are the stories of your neighbors, of the people you pass every day on the street, from the homeless to sexual assault survivors, to those being disowned for their sexuality. It is the sound of our community, and we hope you listen with open ears and an open heart. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Blowfish Speakeasy. We're happy to have our friend Jackie on today. Say, what's up, Jackie?
What's up?
So, Jackie's pretty cool. She's gonna talk a little bit about eating disorders. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the last podcast. We thought it was one of the best ones we've ever done. Shout out to everyone who supported the Given Hour line, the hero line last month. It was pretty awesome. We've still got some in store. If you're listening to this, it's October 6th when we're recording this, so we've still got a few things left, but not too much. So for this month, October, we've done a couple different things with all the crazy sexual assault stuff going on as far as Kavanaugh hearings and stuff like that. We've still got our I Believe You t-shirt in store. $10 of that goes straight to Rain, which is pretty awesome. It's done pretty well. So it's kind of, switched our stuff around as far as our plan for October. Our main plan, what we're going to end up at is all bodies are good bodies. So that's kind of what we're geared around, and that's why Jackie's here. So she's going to talk to us a little bit about her story and a little bit about, the battles that she's went through in her life to get to where she is today. So, Jackie, go and tell everybody, where you're from, where you grew up at, and stuff like that.
So, I'm from Germantown. I grew up on St. Catherine Street and Fisher Avenue. Both of those.
In Louisville. So
yeah, in Louisville.
She's from where we're at.
Yep. Now I'm still in Germantown, just not on the same street.
Cool. So, she's actually, you're a teacher now, right?
Yeah, I
Cool.
teach preschool.
That's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as growing up and stuff like that, you can talk a little bit about, I guess, when, I don't know too much about eating disorders, and that's kind of why we like having people like you on here. So could you talk a little bit about, like, maybe exactly when stuff started coming up in your life, and then maybe when you realized it? And
Yeah, so I started really young. I was like 8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we had, it wasn't at its worst then, but that's definitely when it started. We had a family friend that would stay over, and he would come home drunk all the time, and he would tell me every single night, "You're a really pretty girl, but you'd be beautiful if you just lost your baby fat."
Wow.
And, I was 8, so I was like, what? And I didn't really understand it, because when you're 8, you don't really know.
How could you?
You're worried about, playing in the dirt. I don't know. But that's when I was like, okay, well, how do I lose the baby fat? And then I just kind of had, all these weird questions about diets. And I would tell my mom that I was going to go on a diet. It was, a different diet every week that I was trying to start. And I didn't ever follow through with them. But, that's when the thought process started. When I realized that I needed to lose weight, quote unquote.
So you're 8, 9, 10 years old, and you're talking about going on diets and stuff like that. Wow.
Yeah, it was wild.
So, I guess, was there a time when, it's just always been with you since then, I guess, kind of? How did it progress through grade school and stuff like that?
Grade school, I got picked on a lot. I wasn't, a super chubby kid, but I definitely was a little bit chubbier than everybody else. And everybody else would call me fat. So.
Oh my gosh.
And I wasn't even fat. I think I was 50 pounds. I don't know. But everybody else was. Kids are mean.
Yeah,
kids are so mean, and they're
yes.
brutal. So I don't know. From that, and then having that family friend tell me that I'd be beautiful if I lost weight. And then going into the teenage years where your body's doing all these kinds of weird things because it's changing. I don't know, it's weird. And then, of course, there's the internet, and, I was on Tumblr a lot. And, there are actually, I didn't know this at the time, but there are actually, websites that support eating disorder habits.
Like
Yeah.
encourage you to.
Yeah, like they give you tips on how to like purge your food and
Wow.
like where to get like diuretics and like they have like all these different quotes on like your stomach's not growling, it's applauding, and like it's so
So
toxic.
that is crazy. I mean, I've heard
Mm-hmm.
of crazy websites before, but that's on
Mm-hmm.
another level. So did you find these when you were?
I was, I think, 14 when I found those. And then, like, they would post those things, but then they would also post pictures of these people that were, like, extremely thin. Like, you could see every single bone. And they would say that it was beautiful and that it was ideal. And then they would, like, encourage people to want to look like that. And having already had this poor body image, I was like, okay, well, maybe that's what I need to look like.
Yeah, especially with, I mean, like you said, going to school and kids picking on you and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like, I can see where it kind of feeds the cycle to keep going. As far as like help at that time, did you even? I mean, you thought that that's like what you were supposed to look like, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
you didn't even.
Well, I started going to therapy for anxiety at the time, and I was talking about it, like just dieting and all that kind of stuff, and I guess that kind of triggered my therapist's thoughts, and she was like, okay, well, maybe this is an issue that we need to talk about.
Mm.
And my therapist at the time sucked. I'm not going to say her name, but she was horrible. And she actually, in passing, I don't think she meant to, but told me how to make myself throw up. So, like, that wasn't a good idea because I was already in that
Yeah.
mindset where I'm like, okay, well,
Are you in high school at this time, I guess?
I was 15 when all this was going on. And so I had tried the purging thing. It didn't really work for me. I mean, it's
What is
not
that?
supposed to work.
So I don't know.
Purging is where like if you eat, you don't have to binge eat before you purge. You just no matter how much you eat, you either like make yourself throw up or you like abuse diuretics where like you take laxatives and it just flushes it all out.
Wow.
Um,
And Jackie was nice enough. I asked her before if she's open to talk about everything and
yeah,
educate everybody, so she's awesome to
yeah, I don't have a filter.
explain this stuff to us. So basically, did you try it? Start purging? Is that what a lot?
Yeah, I tried to. It didn't. That wasn't really my thing. I know that kind of sounds morbid, but it wasn't. So then I started restricting, and I would only allow myself like 500 calories a day.
Wow.
Or that was the ideal. Like I woke up in the morning, and I was like, every morning I would tell myself I'm not gonna eat today, and then I would count calories, and I kept like this journal of like what I ate and how many calories were in it, and then when I hit my max, I was like, all right, this is where it cuts off. And then sometimes I wouldn't follow through with it and I would eat more and then I would feel really guilty and like set fewer calories for the next day.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Did like anybody be like, hey Jackie, like, I mean, obviously your body was probably, I mean, was it?
Malnourished.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad because that was like when acting on it had very first started. So like I wasn't already like seeing the repercussions from it. Apparently they can tell in your urine when you go to the doctor if you haven't been eating.
Oh wow.
There's like something that releases in your pee. And they found it and they were like, what? But
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It was weird. Like
yeah.
That was a very weird.
So when the doctor said that, did your mom be like, hey, what's going on, or was it?
I'm really open with my mom, so like I had already told her that that's what was going on. Because when you're under the age of 16, your mom has like access to everything medically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So even if I didn't tell her, my therapist would have. So but my mom, she understood. I don't think that she really knew how to handle it, and I imagine it probably stressed her out because I mean no parent wants to see their kid.
Yeah, I mean that's part of
that.
why we're talking about this right now because I mean kids out there or adults for that matter with kids. I mean, how do you go about one, make sure your kid's not talking to other kids in like a negative way and educating them on this. But the other thing is like there might be somebody out there listening who's either going through this right now or parent with a kid and being in that situation. So I think it's really important you talking about like you are right now. So as far as like progressing through like high school and then in past those years, did it get worse or did it kind of level out, and did you get better after the doctor diagnosed it?
So my diagnosis, I didn't fit the weight criteria for anorexia. So, it's not called this anymore. I don't know what it's called now, but at the time it was called eating disorder not otherwise specified, or EDNOS for short. So they diagnosed it, and they basically, it's all the traits of anorexia, like the characteristics of it, but you don't fit a certain criteria. Like, this is kind of like TMI, but like when a lot of people who struggle with anorexia don't have their periods because their body doesn't do it anymore. And they don't, like, they're super thin, and I didn't fit that. Like, I still had my period, and I was still a fairly healthy weight. So
Yeah.
But the characteristics and the behaviors were not healthy, so that's when they diagnosed that. And throughout like the rest of high school, it was more so like the thought patterns. Like, I would wake up and like certain foods I wouldn't eat because I was like, okay, well, I can't eat those because those have more calories or more carbs or whatever it was that I was counting for that day. And it didn't really get worse. It stayed, I mean, the thoughts got worse, but I didn't act on it any worse because I'd gotten a new therapist and we had been working on it. And I'm more of like an all or nothing kind of person, so I'm either eating or I'm not. And there was no like, we'll add this many calories today and then we'll ease into it. Like, I wasn't that kind of person, so I just kind of jumped right into it. And for some people, that can be dangerous because that can like trigger them to be like, holy crap, this is a lot of food. Yeah. And then you have that guilt that sets in. But for me, it worked. It was like exposure therapy, I guess. But so when you come back from that, when you come back from not eating and then you start eating again, you gain weight. Like, that's just the healthy part about it. But that also sucks mentally for somebody who's going through that, because you're like, all right, well, all of this is focused around a number and a look. Now the number's going up. I need to make it go back down. So it's like a back and forth kind of thing, and it's really difficult. But I don't think there's any one healthy way to go about it. That was just the way that I did it.
So I love that you use the word like healthy when you started eating again. Like, that's cool. Like, I think one thing that even talk to you now, I mean, I thought it was like mental, but until you really hear somebody talk about it, it's more the thoughts that are like, and it's not, I mean, it's just there. It seems like, all the time. That's kind of the hard part.
You're trapped in it. Like, it's just like any other mental illness. So like, I have anxiety pretty severely, and that's something that you can't escape from. And it's just the same with an eating disorder. Like, I mean, you can't get away from your own mind, so you're stuck with it and all the thoughts that come along with it. That's why it's so important to try and change the thought process and try to change the pattern. Because, I mean, you can eat all you want, but if the thoughts are still there, then it doesn't matter. You have to combat all of that.
It's almost the feeling like, I mean, just hearing you talk, like the feeling of guilt after you do it's almost worse than the actual, not eating part of it. It's crazy. I mean, I never really thought about it in terms of like that. I mean, I guess it could be, I mean, kind of the same thing, not that I'm comparing it to like a drug addiction, but I mean, the thoughts of like, heroin, when you're addicted to heroin, I mean, it's always there. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle to, think about or, relate to, is basically the heroin addict, when they wake up in the morning, it's like, that's what I want. It's not like it goes away. Like, it's not like you can like scratch that itch and then it goes away. It's kind of like there. And I think that's,
And then you get, I mean, it's funny that you say addiction, because you can get addicted to it. You can get addicted to the progress, which that makes it sound like it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's negative progress, but when you're in that mindset, you think that it's a good thing that you're losing weight. But you get addicted to that. You get addicted to seeing the number go down, and you're like, well, I can do better than this. Or the number goes down and you're still not satisfied, and you're like, all right, well, now I have to cut back even more. Or a lot of people exercise a lot with their eating disorders, and it can be an addiction. You can get addicted to the number, like seeing the number go down and like that adrenaline rush when you see that. You can get addicted to the exercise aspect of it. The feeling of your stomach being empty. Like, there's a lot of addictions that can come along with it.
Oh, I didn't even realize. I mean,
Yeah.
and put it in terms of like progress and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. That's a completely different way. I mean, listening to you talk about it instead of somebody looking from the outside, like, well, they're just trying to get. I mean, but being in it, I mean, it's like me going to the trying to bench press more weight or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that feeling of, oh, I'm doing better. Oh, I'm doing better. Oh, I'm doing better. Like,
yeah, but you're doing it about something that's so dangerous.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are people that are addicted to eating. So, like, that binge eating. And then I think that's where a lot of, like, the purging behaviors come in, because for people that struggle with, like, eating a lot, then they feel guilty and then they make themselves throw up.
Oh, that makes sense.
So, I mean, you don't have to have, like, a binge eating aspect to purge, but that's where a lot of the purging comes from. From, like, binging and purging, you'll hear that a lot with eating disorders.
Yeah. Huh. I never... Yeah, that's wild as far as that goes. And I guess the other end of the spectrum, too, I mean, I guess it's a way of, like, kind of, once you're addicted to it, it's kind of escaping. And I guess it's like you said, on the other end of the spectrum where people are addicted to eating all the time. I mean, I'd say it's probably the same for them, where it's always in your head and you just want to keep going back to it over and over because it gives you that feeling that, whatever that feeling is that they have when...
That euphoric feeling.
Yeah, and I guess they keep trying to go after it, which is wild.
Yeah.
As far as, like, getting help and stuff like that, what do you think, like, helped you the most? Or what would you, like, if somebody's going through this right now, like, what do you think you'd tell them? Like, hey, this is maybe something to help me, or maybe try this, or...
Yeah. So I don't think that there's any one healthy way to get help. There's, like, a variety of different ways, just depending on, like, what your struggle is and, like, how deep you are into it. For me, I just, through therapy and, like, talking to other people who went through it, learning what is healthy and what's not, and, like, seeing different pictures. Like, my mom would show me pictures of women who had a little more meat on their bones, and she'd be like, this is healthy. This is what you need to be striving for. Not saying that you can't, like, eat healthy foods, but, like, when you're restricting how much you eat, you're not giving your body the nutrients that it needs. And when you're starving yourself like that, your body starts to hang on to the nutrients that it does get, so you actually start to bloat a little bit more and gain weight, because it doesn't want to let it go because it's in survival mode.
Makes sense.
So it was just really going through therapy and trying to change the thought process. And I mean, it's a battle with yourself. I know that sounds silly, but it is. Like, you're literally arguing with yourself all the time, and you have to use the better part of yourself to make that convincing sound better.
Yeah,
like,
that doesn't sound silly at all. I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Like, you have to wake up in the morning, and instead of saying, I'm not going to eat today, you have to say, I need to eat today. And it's not, I want to eat. You don't have to want to eat, but you need to eat because it's what your body needs to fuel itself.
Yeah, I mean, battling with yourself in your head, everybody thinks, well, I'm silly. Everybody does it. I mean, everybody's got that, one part of your brain that's saying, no, don't do this, and the other has to battle it. So, yeah, no, it does seem silly, but it makes perfect sense to me. I'm sure it does everybody listening too, as far as, like, hey, the good thing in my head versus the, like, how to kind of go about it. Is there anything, like, else that you would, like, recommend people to, like, if you're going through this right now, as you said, it's easy to go through the rabbit hole of, like, Tumblr. I mean, it's still around. It's not like a thing, but blogs and all that stuff. Is there anything that you would, like, like your mom kind of did to you, like to refocus them maybe back on a healthier track besides like finding a therapist? Obviously, that's probably most important. If you're
Mm-hmm.
in school, go to a counselor, something like that, and try your best. But do you know of any other like resources on there online, maybe that like, or not even resources, but like something that they could go to be like, hey, this is healthy, like stuff like that.
Yeah. So NEDA.
Cool.
It's the National Eating Disorder Awareness Organization. And they, on their website, they have like a variety of resources. I think they have like a search engine that gets you like a therapist or like an inpatient treatment facility if that's like the severity of it. Which that's another thing. A lot of people think that they don't need help because they think it's not that bad. When you're in the midst of it, you're like, I'm not that bad. I don't need help. I can fix this. And then you don't realize how bad it is until you are outside of that situation. But NEDA, they offer like hotlines. They have different people that you can talk to. They have a bunch of ambassadors. I know they go around and do like NEDA walks throughout.
Yeah, it's actually, if people want to look it up, it's nationaleatingdisorders.org. So NEDA, for short, but National Eating Disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Nationaleatingdisorders.org is where you can go to get help for that. And you made a really good point about, looking at it from like an outside perspective. Like when you're inside
Mm-hmm.
all the time and like all you're thinking, I mean, the only thing you have access to really is, your thoughts. And like
Mm-hmm.
if that thought pattern, and honestly, if the chemicals in your brain are spitting stuff out that make you think, one thing or
Mm-hmm.
make you crave another, until you get that outside perspective, it's kind of tough to get outside of yourself and really
Yeah.
think about it.
And I think it's really important to find out where it comes from.
Mm.
Like for me, like I went through a lot of things as a kid. Like I was abused as a kid, and like having people tell me that I would be beautiful if I just lost weight. So there's a lot of things that made me feel like I wasn't good enough. So then I had to try to be an overachiever in my eating disorder, I guess, and make myself feel good enough, and pretty enough. And
Yeah.
I think when you finally get to the bottom of like where it comes from, then you can actually start treating it. Because if you don't and you just mask it, then it's still gonna be there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you made it through that because none of those things are really true. So
Yeah,
I'm sorry you
thank
had
you.
to go through. It's kind of crazy.
No, it's okay.
As far as like, moving forward, like in the future and stuff like that, like when people like finally make it out of where they were in that dark place and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, like has anything helped you like keep on the same track, like looking at different things, or like is there something in your head you go back to all the time being like, hey, this is what I like go back
Yeah.
to?
Um. So to go back to like restricting the foods scares the crap out of me. To have that idea that I would be going back to that unhealthy mindset where that's all that I'm consumed by, like that scares me. So like this morning I woke up and I put on this shirt and I was like, all right, well the shirt's too tight and it shows my stomach. I can't wear it. I can't go. I have to stay home. And like then I just thought about it and I was like, dude, I'm going to talk about body image and an eating disorder, and I'm sitting here fighting with myself over whether or not a shirt is too tight. And like you literally have to argue with yourself. And I mean, I still struggle with it sometimes, not necessarily the restrictions, but like waking up and like looking in the mirror, especially for me, like my weight fluctuates. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure everybody does, but for me, like that always bothered me, because I like consistency, but some days my pants don't fit and sometimes they do. So like it like
I
when
think
I
everybody can relate to that.
yeah, when I wake up and I'm like struggling to butt my pants and I'm doing the skinny jean dance, like I don't know, it stresses me out, but you just have to think about, okay, well like I'm healthy. Like the fact that my pants are too tight means that I'm not in that unhealthy spot that I was when I was 15.
Yeah.
Um so even like the negative aspects can become a positive. And I think it just all matters on where your head's at.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean that can speak to a lot of things. I mean the negatives can become positives. I mean
perspective is everything.
yeah, that's pretty amazing that you came around all the way to that point. One thing I do want to talk about like briefly is just basically like, you know, how it's kind of a more broad thing, but like how society is like I think we're doing a little bit better job of it, but how like it's still driven by, you know, you turn on the TV and then you see like all these skinny women and stuff like that. Like how do you think that like the tide will finally get turned? Do you think it's just like this might be too deep of a question, but do you think it's just like, you know, right now that's what's in, you know, style, or like do you think it's like I don't know, what do you think when like you turn on the TV? Like what do kids like you talked a little bit about how yours originated and stuff like that, but like how can we change it to where like that's not what is like in style or like
Yeah. It's kind of funny because like if you roll back 100 years ago, like models back then were a little heavier.
yeah.
And that's what society saw as beautiful. I mean, the more meat you had on your bones, the more beautiful you were. And I think that that's so cool. And I don't know how we got where we are. But I mean, it's true. Like you turn on the TV or you look through magazines and there's advertisements for weight loss pills and like diuretics, and then there's like weight loss programs and all these things that people are offering to do like for weight loss, but nowhere in those magazines do you see how do you get eating disorder help? How do you gain weight? How do you like
No, yeah, I mean that's perfect. I think that like I mean that would be something small. Like we're always looking for like how do we make a difference here? I mean it's pretty simple as like hey, on anytime there's an advertisement for a weight loss pill or something like that, NEDA.org is on there, or like something like that. Where I mean, you go buy tobacco nowadays, and it's got like a thing on there like this may cause lung cancer or whatever, and it just gives you that resource out to where it's like, hey, this is it. I mean, that's a small change that like, I mean, honestly, the government can make tomorrow, and then the text on a thing that could save somebody's life. I mean, yeah, that's a good point.
And Tumblr's doing a really good job now. I got on there the other day just to see if they still like allow that stuff. And if you go in the search engine and you type the blogs that like promote the anorexic behaviors and the bulimic behaviors, they're called like Pro Ana and Pro Mia. So if you put that in the search engine, a pop-up comes up and it says, "Hey, are you doing okay? Can we get you help?"
Wow,
and
that's
you
pretty
can,
cool.
Yeah, and you can like deny it and still look through the information, but it still pops it up and it asks you if you need anything. And I think that that's like such a huge leap.
Yeah.
Like even if our society doesn't change, like we still need access to help. And
yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty amazing, honestly, that they put that in place.
Yeah.
So as far as like, you know, well, first we'd like to thank you for like coming and talking to us and stuff like that. Yeah, like I should have done that as soon as you came on. But one more thing, like just a little bit educational. Like people might not know the difference between like anorexia and bulimia and stuff like that. Will you talk just briefly about what the difference is, and like just so people are like we want to give this to not only people going through this, but to people who can see other people going through this and maybe talk to them about it too.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm no expert, but this is just my understanding, my
you probably
experience
with it.
Any
doctors see it. Like,
but like anorexia is, from my experience, just where you're driven by like this. I mean, most eating disorders are driven by this desire to lose weight. It's all circled around weight, or food. And for anorexia, you deprive yourself of it, and you deprive yourself of it so much that like your body loses its nutrients. And when you do that, when you have like this hormonal imbalance, that's why women don't get their periods when they have anorexia, because there's this huge hormonal imbalance. You start growing hair in places that you haven't had hair before. Like, it's like your body goes through so many crazy changes with it. And your skin starts like flaking because you're dehydrated, and it's pretty dangerous. It's a very dangerous path to roll down. And then bulimia is kind of the same idea as far as like the thought process. It's like driven by like the want and the need to lose weight. But you don't necessarily, I mean, some people do, like, deprive themselves of food, but it's more of the binging and purging. Like, you binge eat, or even if you don't binge eat, if you eat anything, it's that making yourself purge to get rid of it, for the people who don't want to restrict how much they're eating.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I think balance is probably like the best thing people could kind of think of as far as like, when they're looking at their weight and looking back and forth. It's like balance. I mean, just you said it earlier, like healthy and balanced. Like,
also stay off the internet.
Yeah.
For real.
That might be good advice for life.
BMI charts are crap, and that's like the height and weight charts. That really got me, because when I was 15, I think I was like 120 pounds, and I'm 5'1". And the height and weight charts told me that I was like 20 pounds overweight.
Yeah, those things are crazy. I mean, it said the same thing. Like, I was done, like, 9% body fat, like, 2 years ago, and that thing said I was overweight. I was like, this thing's crazy. Like,
yeah.
So it's,
that stuff's not accurate, so don't look at it.
Yeah, I don't think it's healthy either.
No.
Well, we'd like to thank you for coming on board again and, just getting this stuff out there and really educating, people and talking about something that you've been through that, like I said, I haven't really ever talked to anybody this in depth about somebody who's been through, the disorders and stuff like that. Are there any, like, signs people should look for, like, to help their friends or, like, maybe to recognize it? I mean, obviously loss of weight, I guess, would be the biggest thing.
Yeah, and, like, for the people who, I mean, weight loss is a big one, but for some people, it's, their eating disorders, they just overeat all the time and, like, they gain weight. But, for me, the signs that I showed, I just got really anxious around food, and I didn't talk about food in a healthy way. I would always call myself fat, or, like, I would change my clothes 70,000 times before I left the house, and, like, during family meals, like, a lot of people will get super anxious. Like, Thanksgiving is a really difficult holiday for people with eating disorders. Just because there's this abundance of food and you feel like it's appropriate for you to eat and, like, indulge in it, but at the same time you're fighting yourself because you're like, I can't. Like, I can't eat this. I'm gonna get fat. Like, it's just this awful mindset. Just looking for those signs, like, if you notice somebody super uncomfortable every time you're around food, but, like, when you're hanging out at the movies or something, they're not. A lot of people, like, with bulimia, they'll eat and then immediately escape to the bathroom. And that's a pretty telltale sign. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
I mean, in approaching those people, would you have any, I mean, I know it's not expert, but, talk to them, be like, hey, do you need anything or something like that? I guess would be the best way to approach it.
It's really difficult. Like, that whole situation is touchy, and it just depends on the person and, like, what relationship you have with them. Because, like, for me, at that time, like, I was so irritated with myself because I knew that what I was doing was not okay. But at the same time, like, I couldn't get away from it, so I was kind of aggravated and bitter in general. So, like, if I didn't know you and you came up to me and you just said something about, like, hey, I noticed that you didn't eat today, I'd probably be like, okay, well, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, but for my mom, like, my mom would talk to me all the time about it, and she was pretty supportive, and she would just be like, okay, well, like, checking in on me. Like, every night she would be like, well, how much did you eat today? Did you eat enough? Like, where's your mind at? Like, all of that. But if you don't already know that somebody's got an eating disorder and you see the behaviors, if you're close with them, I would just ask them, like, hey, are you okay? Like, I noticed that you looked a little uncomfortable. You don't have to say, like, you didn't eat anything or you ate too much. You can just say, you looked a little anxious. Are you doing okay? Is there anything that I can do for you? And then just kind of let that lead into the conversation, because it's kind of touchy to talk about food when you're dealing with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great place to end it, to where, something maybe, hopefully that, this will bring awareness to it. And then if you do see a friend or somebody out there, you could tell, somebody close to them, or like you said, build a rapport up and then kind of slowly talk to them about it. So, just to recap, NEDA is the organization. NationalEatingDisorders.org is where you can go get help. Jackie, do you have Facebook by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. If you want to reach out to Jackie on Facebook,
Yeah, for sure.
you're more than welcome. You care saying your last name, so like
Chism.
Jackie Chism.
Chism. It's weird, but
cool. Jackie Chism on there. So if you we have people on here all the time. We've talked about it before. JD, Avalon with their organizations. Alex is always open. Kat, talking about going through the transition, transgender and stuff like that. I mean, these people are on here and they don't mind talking to you too and help you get the help they need. So Jackie Chism on Facebook, if you want to look her up on there, shoot her a message, and then maybe she can direct you in the right way, or tell a little bit more about her story if you want to. So Jackie, thanks for coming on. Hopefully,
no problem.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and thank you all for coming back to the Blowfish Speakeasy. Our shirt, All Bodies Are Good Bodies, will be out soon, and I think it's a really important shirt, and we're gonna give back to NEDA, so it's pretty cool. As most of you know, 10% of every sale all the time goes directly back to social justice issues, and places like NEDA. So that's really what we want to do, is make cool stuff, and come shop with us instead of Abercrombie or American Eagle or any of those brands, and we can make a difference while we're selling cool stuff too. So that's why we're here. We're at Blowfish Clothing, blowfish.com, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.